Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is Jazz by Ken Burns. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Now, we're embarking on an incredible journey through the heart of American culture, exploring the vibrant, complex, and utterly essential story of jazz. Our guide for this adventure is Ken Burns' monumental documentary series, Jazz. More than just a history of a musical genre, Burns's work delves into the very soul of America, revealing how jazz, born from the crucible of slavery and segregation, became a profound expression of freedom, individuality, and collective spirit. It's a story of extraordinary artists, groundbreaking innovations, and the relentless pursuit of beauty in the face of adversity. This series isn't just about notes and rhythms. It's about race, about identity, about what it means to be American. It explores how this uniquely American art form both reflected and shaped the social and political landscape of the 20th century, sparking both celebration and controversy. So settle in as we begin our deep dive into the world of jazz. The story of jazz, as Ken Burns masterfully unfolds it, begins not with a bang, but with a whisper, a spiritual, a field holler echoing across the southern landscape, steeped in the pain and resilience of enslaved Africans. It's a sound forged in the fires of oppression, yet imbued with an indomitable human spirit. We are transported to the late 19th century, a time of profound transition in America, especially in the South. The Emancipation Proclamation had freed millions, but the promise of equality remained elusive, replaced by the harsh realities of Jim Crow laws and widespread discrimination. Yet, within this crucible of hardship, a new music began to coalesce, drawing on a rich tapestry of African rhythms, European harmonies, and American folk traditions. The blues, with its raw emotional honesty, emerged as a foundational element, giving voice to the everyday struggles and triumphs of Black Americans. This wasn't merely entertainment, it was a profound cultural expression, a means of survival, a form of coded communication. From the sorrow songs and spirituals of the plantations to the syncopated melodies of ragtime, a piano-centric style popularized by figures like Scott Joplin, whose intricate compositions captivated audiences with their infectious rhythms and formal elegance, the building blocks of jazz were slowly but surely being laid. New Orleans, a city unlike any other in America, played a pivotal role in this nascent period. Its unique cultural gumbo, a vibrant mix of French, Spanish, African, and Creole influences, provided the perfect incubator for this evolving music. Unlike many other southern cities, New Orleans had a more relaxed social structure, particularly in its infamous Storyville district, where a vibrant nightlife thrived. Here, marching bands, brass bands, and dance halls offered fertile ground for musicians to experiment. The instruments of European military bands, cornets, trombones, clarinets, and drums, were readily available and adopted, but played with a distinctive African-American sensibility, bending notes, improvising melodies, and infusing them with the call and response patterns rooted in African traditions. The collective improvisation that would become a hallmark of early New Orleans jazz began to flourish, with each instrument weaving its own melodic line within a shared harmonic framework. Storyville was a melting pot, and within its dimly lit clubs and boisterous saloons, musicians like Buddy Bolden, a charismatic cornetist whose powerful sound and improvisational flair became legendary even though he never recorded, laid the groundwork. His mythical status underscores the oral tradition and fleeting nature of this early era. These early practitioners weren't playing jazz as we know it, but rather a robust, improvisatory dance music that reflected the energy and chaos of the city itself. The freedom inherent in this new sound, the ability for individual expression within a collective framework, was revolutionary. It was a music that embraced spontaneity, challenging the rigid structures of traditional European music. As the 20th century dawned, a new rhythm was emerging from the streets and juke joints of the South, a sound that would soon captivate the nation and, eventually, the world, carrying with it the undeniable spirit of a people determined to be heard. This embryonic stage of jazz was a testament to human creativity blossoming in the most challenging of circumstances, a powerful harbinger of the cultural seismic shifts to come. As the 20th century truly began to unfold, the nascent sounds of jazz, still primarily confined to New Orleans, started to reach beyond its birthplace. The closure of Storyville in 1917, due to pressure from the Navy during World War I, served as a reluctant catalyst, dispersing many of New Orleans's talented musicians across the country. They carried their unique brand of music with them, establishing beachheads in burgeoning urban centers like Chicago, Kansas City, and New York. This diaspora was crucial, allowing the music to evolve and adapt to new environments and audiences. Chicago, in particular, became a vital hub. Its booming economy, vibrant speakeasy scene during Prohibition, and large African-American population migrating from the South created a fertile ground for jazz to flourish. The city's dance halls and cabarets demanded energetic, improvisational music, and New Orleans musicians, bringing their collective polyphony, found eager audiences. It was in this dynamic atmosphere that a young trumpet player named Louis Armstrong began to emerge as a truly transformative figure. Armstrong, born in the dire poverty of New Orleans's battleground neighborhood, possessed not only an unparalleled technical mastery of his instrument, but also an innovative melodic imagination and a profoundly expressive vocal style. Before Armstrong fully blossomed, another significant figure, Jelly Roll Morton, was making waves. Morton, a self-proclaimed inventor of jazz, a claim hotly debated but indicative of his immense ego and influence, was a brilliant pianist, composer, and bandleader who synthesized ragtime syncopation with the blues' expressive qualities and New Orleans's collective improvisation. His intricate arrangements and a keen understanding of jazz's nascent harmonic language helped bridge the gap between ragtime and the more developed forms of jazz. Morton's recordings with his Red Hot Peppers demonstrated a sophisticated approach to ensemble playing, where each instrument had its defined role, yet still allowed for individual creativity. He brought a sense of structure and arrangement to a music that was often characterized by its spontaneous, freewheeling nature. But it was Louis Armstrong who would redefine the very essence of jazz. His early recordings with King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band in Chicago provided an initial glimpse of his genius, showcasing his remarkable tone, rhythmic precision, and melodic ingenuity. However, it was his Hot 5 and Hot 7 recordings from the mid-1920s that solidified his legendary status. These sessions, recorded under his own name, moved jazz beyond collective improvisation and towards the concept of the soloist as the central figure. Armstrong's solos were not mere embellishments. They were fully formed melodic statements, each one a miniature masterpiece of invention and emotion. He possessed an uncanny ability to turn popular songs into vehicles for profound artistic expression, elevating the simple melodic line into something complex and deeply personal. His innovative use of scat singing, treating his voice as an instrumental extension, further showcased his boundless creativity and playful spirit. Armstrong's impact was seismic. He taught the world how to swing, imbuing every note with an irresistible rhythmic vitality. He established the trumpet as the dominant solo instrument in jazz, inspiring countless musicians to follow in his footsteps. More than just a musician, Armstrong was a captivating entertainer, a charismatic personality who bridged racial divides and brought joy to millions. His infectious smile and ebullient stage presence masked the deep artistry and disciplined dedication beneath. As jazz spread, it encountered both fascination and resistance. Some viewed it as a crude, immoral music, a threat to traditional values, while others embraced its vitality and liberating energy. Yet, despite the moral panic it sometimes ignited, jazz continued its irresistible march across the American cultural landscape, propelled forward by innovators like Armstrong, who demonstrated that this new music was not just a passing fad but a profound and enduring art form capable of expressing the full spectrum of human experience. The journey from the back alleys of New Orleans to the recording studios of Chicago marked a pivotal moment, transforming jazz from a regional curiosity into a national phenomenon, with Armstrong leading the charge into an uncharted and exhilarating musical future. The Roaring Twenties truly lived up to their name for jazz, as the music exploded in popularity, becoming the soundtrack for an era of unprecedented social and cultural change. As Louis Armstrong's star ascended, so too did the music's reach, stretching from the speakeasies of Chicago to the burgeoning dance halls and opulent ballrooms of New York City. Harlem, in particular, became the epicenter of the jazz age, a vibrant cultural mecca where African American artists, writers, and musicians flourished during the Harlem Renaissance. The Cotton Club, despite its deeply problematic whites-only audience policy, became a legendary venue, showcasing extraordinary black talent. Within its opulent walls, Duke Ellington, a sophisticated and visionary pianist, composer, and bandleader, began to truly define his distinctive sound. Ellington, unlike many of his contemporaries, was not primarily a soloist in the mold of Armstrong, though he was an accomplished pianist. His genius lay in his unparalleled ability to compose and arrange for his orchestra, crafting intricate, evocative pieces that were tailor-made for the unique voices of his individual musicians. He didn't just write notes, he wrote for specific personalities, weaving together their sounds into a rich, kaleidoscopic tapestry. Ellington's music was often described as jungle music in his early Cotton Club days, a problematic term reflecting the exoticizing gaze of his white audiences, but he transcended these limitations, creating music of immense sophistication and emotional depth. His compositions were miniature tone poems, often inspired by his observations of life in Harlem, the complexities of human emotion, and even abstract concepts. He expanded the harmonic and structural possibilities of jazz, pushing beyond the conventional 32-bar song form and embracing longer, more ambitious works. His orchestra, a stable unit for decades, became his living laboratory, allowing him to experiment and refine his sound. Musicians like Johnny Hodges on alto saxophone, Cootie Williams on trumpet, and Juan Tizol on trombone were not just band members. They were collaborators, their unique timbres and improvisational styles integrated seamlessly into Ellington's grand vision. Their collective sound was instantly recognizable, a testament to Ellington's leadership and innovative approach to orchestration. While Ellington was creating his masterpieces in New York, other musical currents were also shaping the jazz landscape. The stride piano tradition, exemplified by the dazzling virtuosity of James P. Johnson and the lightning-fast fingers of Fats Waller, provided a bridge between ragtime and the more improvisational demands of jazz. Stride pianists were often solo entertainers, performing at rent parties and private functions, and their powerful left-hand rhythms and intricate right-hand melodies laid the groundwork for future piano styles. Waller, in particular, became a beloved figure, combining his formidable piano skills with a comedic genius and a charming vocal delivery, making him a crossover star who brought jazz to an even wider audience. The 1920s also saw the proliferation of recording technology, which was instrumental in disseminating jazz across the nation and even internationally. Records allowed people to hear jazz regardless of their proximity to live performances, creating a demand for new sounds and styles. This era was a time of immense creative ferment, where different regional styles and individual approaches to jazz began to cross-pollinate, leading to an explosion of innovation. Yet, amidst the exuberant creativity, the undercurrents of racial segregation and economic inequality remained a stark reality for Black musicians. While jazz was celebrated, the artists who created it often faced systemic discrimination, their access to opportunities limited by the color of their skin. Despite these challenges, the music continued to evolve, demonstrating an unparalleled capacity for artistic growth and adaptation. By the end of the decade, jazz had firmly established itself not just as a popular dance music, but as a sophisticated art form, rich in harmonic complexity, rhythmic innovation, and profound emotional resonance, forever changing the sound of America and setting the stage for even greater transformations to come. As the nation plunged into the Great Depression in the 1930s, jazz, remarkably, did not recede. Instead, it transformed, giving rise to the swing era, a period of unprecedented popularity that saw big bands dominate the airwaves and dance floors across America. This was the music that lifted spirits during desperate times, providing an escape and a sense of collective joy. The rhythmic pulse shifted, becoming smoother, more danceable, driven by a powerful 4-beat swing rhythm that permeated every aspect of the music. The arrangements became more sophisticated, showcasing the collective power of large ensembles, but still leaving room for dazzling individual solos. The visual spectacle of a big band, with its uniformed musicians and dynamic arrangements, became as much a part of the appeal as the sound itself. Benny Goodman, a white clarinetist and bandleader, emerged as a pivotal figure in this era. His orchestra, often featuring Black musicians like Lionel Hampton and Teddy Wilson, became incredibly popular, earning him the title King of Swing. Goodman's willingness to break racial barriers on the bandstand, though often pragmatic and not without its complexities, was a significant step towards integration in the deeply segregated music industry and society at large. His appearance at New York's Carnegie Hall in 1938, a bastion of classical music, symbolized jazz's growing acceptance as a legitimate art form, even as it remained a popular dance music. However, the true heart and soul of swing often resided in the bands led by African-American musicians. Count Basie, a pianist from Kansas City, led an orchestra that epitomized the blues-inflected, riff-driven style of the region. Basie's piano playing was spare and elegant, but his genius lay in his rhythm section, Joe Jones on drums, Walter Page on bass, and Freddie Green on guitar, which created an unstoppable, propulsive swing that musicians revered. His band's arrangements often developed organically, through head arrangements born out of collective improvisation and refined over countless performances, resulting in a raw, unadulterated swing that was both sophisticated and incredibly exciting. Lester Young, Basie's tenor saxophonist, became a towering figure, his light, airy tone and melodic inventiveness a stark contrast to the more robust, aggressive style of Coleman Hawkins. Young's laid-back, lyrical approach to improvisation would profoundly influence subsequent generations of musicians, becoming a cornerstone of modern jazz. While Basie was ruling the Midwest, Duke Ellington continued to push the boundaries of big band jazz in New York. His orchestra, already renowned, reached new heights of artistry in the 1930s and early 40s, producing masterpieces like "Co-Co," "Cottontail," and "Take the Train," composed by his longtime collaborator Billy Strayhorn. Ellington's compositional brilliance allowed him to create a unique orchestral sound that was both distinctly jazz and uniquely Ellingtonian, further blurring the lines between popular music and serious art. The swing era also saw the rise of iconic vocalists who became inextricably linked with the big band sound. Billie Holiday, with her deeply personal and emotionally resonant vocal delivery, transformed popular songs into profound artistic statements, her nuanced phrasing and ability to convey raw emotion unparalleled. Ella Fitzgerald, with her effortless vocal agility, impeccable timing, and astonishing scat singing, became the queen of jazz vocals, her virtuosity admired by musicians and audiences alike. These vocalists, along with the band leaders and instrumentalists, became national celebrities, their faces gracing magazines and their voices filling homes across the country. Yet, beneath the glittering surface of swing's popularity, the struggle for racial equality continued. Black bands often played in segregated venues, toured under harsh conditions, and received less pay than their white counterparts. Despite these injustices, jazz served as a powerful force for unity, bringing together people from different backgrounds on the dance floor and inspiring a sense of shared community. The 1930s were a golden age for jazz, a period when the music achieved widespread commercial success without sacrificing its artistic integrity, setting the stage for the dramatic shifts that would characterize the post-war era. As the 1930s gave way to the early 1940s, the joyous exuberance of the swing era, while still dominant, began to show the first cracks of an impending revolution. World War II brought unprecedented social and economic upheaval, accelerating the pace of change in America and within jazz itself. While big bands still toured and provided a morale boost, the war made large ensembles economically difficult to maintain, as musicians were drafted and travel became restricted. More profoundly, a new generation of musicians, frustrated by the perceived limitations of swing and eager for greater improvisational freedom, began to experiment with a more complex, challenging form of jazz. This nascent style, eventually dubbed bebop, was born in late-night jam sessions in Harlem clubs like Minton's Playhouse and Monroe's Uptown House. These weren't public performances in the traditional sense. They were intensely competitive musical laboratories where young innovators pushed the boundaries of harmony, rhythm, and melody. The goal was to create music that was intellectually stimulating, technically demanding, and less commercially oriented than the dance-focused swing. This was music for listening, not dancing. At the heart of this revolution were figures like Charlie Parker, a saxophonist of astonishing genius, and Dizzy Gillespie, a brilliant trumpeter and bandleader. Parker, known affectionately as Bird, possessed an almost superhuman ability to improvise, playing at blinding speeds with incredible harmonic sophistication. He expanded the language of improvisation, introducing new melodic concepts built on the upper extensions of chords and chromaticism, profoundly influencing every musician who came after him. His solos were intricate, unpredictable, and breathtakingly inventive. Gillespie, with his virtuosic trumpet playing, comedic stage presence, and keen musical intellect, became bebop's elder statesman and tireless evangelist. He codified many of bebop's harmonic and rhythmic conventions, and his compositions like Salt Peanuts and Groovin' High became anthems of the new style. Gillespie's willingness to mentor younger musicians and explain the intricacies of bebop was crucial in its dissemination. Joining Parker and Gillespie in this creative explosion were other pivotal figures: Thelonious Monk, a singular pianist and composer whose idiosyncratic rhythms, angular harmonies, and profound use of space redefined the role of the piano in jazz. And Kenny Clarke and Max Roach, drummers who moved the rhythmic pulse from the bass drum to the ride cymbal, creating a lighter, more fluid foundation that allowed soloists greater rhythmic freedom. Their polyrhythmic approach and use of accents added a new layer of complexity and excitement to the music. Bebop was in many ways a reaction against the commercialism and sometimes formulaic nature of swing. It was designed to be challenging, to separate the serious musician from the casual listener. The tempos were often blistering, the melodies complex and angular, the harmonies dense and often dissonant by traditional standards. This new music was also deeply intertwined with the burgeoning civil rights movement and a growing sense of racial pride and self-determination among African Americans. Bebop musicians, often wearing distinctive eyeglasses and berets, eschewed the entertainer persona of their swing predecessors, asserting their identity as serious artists rather than mere performers. They reclaimed their music from the white-dominated big band industry, infusing it with a sense of urgency and intellectual rigor. However, bebop's complexity and its often uncompromising nature meant it never achieved the widespread commercial success of swing. It was music for a more discerning audience, and its rapid-fire improvisations and often dissonant harmonies were initially jarring to ears accustomed to the smoother sounds of popular music. Yet, its influence was profound and irreversible. Bebop laid the groundwork for all subsequent forms of modern jazz, expanding the harmonic, melodic, and rhythmic vocabulary of the music in ways that would resonate for decades to come. It was a pivotal moment, marking a shift from jazz as primarily dance music to jazz as a highly evolved art form, demanding intellectual engagement and profound musical skill from both its practitioners and its listeners. The energy and innovation of this era set the stage for jazz to continue its relentless evolution, forever challenging preconceived notions of what music could be. As bebop solidified its revolutionary grip on the jazz world, the late 1940s and early 1950s saw the emergence of various responses and reactions to its intensity. The sheer technical demands and often frantic pace of bebop led some musicians to seek a more subdued, cooler aesthetic. This gave rise to cool jazz, a style characterized by a more relaxed tempo, lighter tone, and an emphasis on melodic lyricism and intricate arrangements rather than virtuosic soloing. The landmark album Birth of the Cool, recorded in 1949 but released in 1957 by Miles Davis and his Nonette, featuring arrangements by Gil Evans, Jerry Mulligan, and John Lewis, became a seminal statement of this new direction. Davis's muted, understated trumpet tone and the ensemble's subtle voicings created a sound that was both sophisticated and introspective, a stark contrast to bebop's fiery energy. Cool jazz often incorporated elements of classical music, particularly in its use of counterpoint and orchestral textures, and found a strong base on the West Coast, where musicians like Jerry Mulligan, Chet Baker, and Dave Brubeck became prominent figures. Brubeck's quartet, particularly with alto saxophonist Paul Desmond, achieved widespread popularity with its use of unusual time signatures and catchy, melodic compositions, most famously Take 5. While cool jazz offered a different path, another counter-movement, hard bop, emerged from the East Coast, primarily in New York City. Hard bop was in many ways a reassertion of jazz's roots in the blues and gospel music, a more soulful and aggressive response to the perceived intellectualism of cool jazz. It retained the harmonic and rhythmic sophistication of bebop, but infused it with a stronger rhythmic drive, a heavier beat, and a more direct, emotional melodic sensibility. Musicians like Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers became the quintessential hard bop ensemble, serving as a training ground for countless young talents. Blakey's powerful, swinging drumming and his band's commitment to improvisation and soulful expression made them a beacon of the style. Other key figures included Horace Silver, a pianist and composer whose funky, blues-infused compositions became standards, and Clifford Brown, a trumpeter of extraordinary virtuosity and melodic warmth whose tragically short life cut short a brilliant career. Sonny Rollins, a tenor saxophonist known for his powerful tone, thematic improvisation, and long, exhilarating solos, also made his mark in this era, demonstrating an unparalleled ability to develop a simple melodic idea into a complex narrative. The 1950s also saw the continued evolution of established masters. Miles Davis, ever the innovator, would not remain confined to cool jazz. His collaborations with Gil Evans in the late 1950s, producing orchestral masterpieces like Miles Ahead, Porgy and Bess, and Sketches of Spain, further expanded the palette of jazz, blending jazz improvisation with lush, classical-influenced arrangements. These albums showcased Davis's lyrical trumpet playing against a richly textured backdrop, demonstrating the infinite possibilities of jazz composition and arrangement. John Coltrane, a saxophonist who had begun his ascent playing with Miles Davis, was also meticulously developing his own revolutionary sound, driven by an insatiable hunger for harmonic exploration. His sheets of sound approach, characterized by a rapid succession of notes and complex chordal patterns, was both exhilarating and challenging, foreshadowing the even more radical innovations he would bring in the coming decade. As the decade drew to a close, jazz was a vibrant and diverse landscape, pulling in multiple directions simultaneously. From the introspective cool of the West Coast to the fiery soulfulness of East Coast hard bop, and the ongoing explorations of giants like Miles Davis and John Coltrane, the music continued to demonstrate its remarkable capacity for reinvention and growth, setting the stage for the profound transformations that would characterize the 1960s. The 1950s culminated in an album that would forever change the landscape of jazz, Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, released in 1959. This album was a masterclass in modal jazz, a revolutionary concept that shifted improvisation away from complex chord changes and towards scales modes. This approach offered soloists greater melodic freedom, encouraging them to explore horizontal musical lines rather than being constrained by rapid harmonic shifts. The result was a sound that was at once spacious, meditative, and deeply soulful, yet profoundly sophisticated. The album's success was immediate and enduring, becoming not just the best-selling jazz album of all time, but also a cornerstone of 20th century music, influencing musicians across genres. The lineup on Kind of Blue was itself legendary, featuring Miles Davis on trumpet, John Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley on saxophones, Bill Evans, and Wynton Kelly on one track on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and Jimmy Cobb on drums. Each musician contributed to the album's unique texture, their collective empathy and individual brilliance creating a cohesive yet endlessly inventive masterpiece. Following Kind of Blue, the 1960s became a decade of intense experimentation and fragmentation in jazz, mirroring the social and political upheavals of the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War. John Coltrane, having honed his craft with Miles Davis, embarked on his own extraordinary journey of musical exploration. His relentless pursuit of spiritual and musical truth led him to push the boundaries of harmony, rhythm, and structure to their limits. Albums like Giant Steps, 1960, showcased his sheets of sound approach in full force, demanding unprecedented technical mastery and harmonic understanding. But it was A Love Supreme, 1965, that solidified his iconic status. This four-part suite was a deeply personal spiritual statement, a profound expression of devotion and transcendence, which transcended musical categories and resonated with audiences far beyond the jazz world. Coltrane's later work delved into free jazz and avant-garde explorations, characterized by collective improvisation, abstract harmonies, and a powerful emotional intensity that could be both challenging and exhilarating. His influence on future generations of saxophonists and improvisers was immeasurable, inspiring many to seek their own unique voices and push beyond conventional boundaries. The 1960s also saw the rise of free jazz, a radical departure from the structured forms of earlier jazz. Ornette Coleman, with his revolutionary album The Shape of Jazz to Come, 1959, challenged traditional notions of harmony, melody, and rhythm, often improvising without a predefined chord progression or consistent tempo. His music, initially met with both fervent admiration and fierce criticism, was a bold assertion of absolute musical freedom, emphasizing spontaneous interaction and raw emotional expression. Free jazz, though often polarizing, became a powerful voice for artists who sought to break away from established norms and reflect the turbulent spirit of the times. It allowed for a more visceral and sometimes confrontational musical language, embodying the spirit of protest and liberation that defined the era. Meanwhile, established figures like Duke Ellington continued to innovate, composing extended suites and collaborating with younger artists, demonstrating his remarkable adaptability and enduring relevance. Louis Armstrong, though no longer at the vanguard of innovation, remained a beloved international ambassador for jazz, his unique charisma and timeless contributions continuing to delight audiences worldwide, even as the music around him continued to evolve at a blistering pace. The 1960s were a period of profound artistic ferment, where jazz fragmented into myriad styles, reflecting the complex and often contradictory forces at play in American society, pushing the very definition of what jazz could be. As the 1960s drew to a close and the 1970s dawned, jazz found itself at a crossroads. The widespread popularity of jazz fusion in the previous decade had brought new listeners, but it also sparked a fierce debate about the authenticity and future direction of the music. Many critics and musicians felt that fusion had strayed too far from jazz's core principles of swing, improvisation, and the blues. In response to this shifting landscape, and ever the innovator, Miles Davis once again led the charge into new territory, pioneering jazz fusion. Recognizing the immense energy and widespread appeal of rock, soul, and funk, Davis began to incorporate electric instruments, electric piano, electric guitar, electric bass, and rock rhythms into his music. Albums like In a Silent Way, 1969, and the groundbreaking Bitches Brew, 1970, were seismic shifts, characterized by long, open-ended improvisations, heavily processed sounds, and a more groove-oriented approach. Bitches Brew, in particular, was a dense, often dissonant and electrifying double album that polarized critics, but sold remarkably well, bringing jazz to a new, rock-oriented audience. Davis's embrace of electric instruments and amplified sounds sparked both excitement and controversy within the jazz community. Purists decried it as a betrayal of jazz's acoustic roots and artistic integrity, while proponents hailed it as a necessary evolution, a way to keep the music vital and relevant in a changing world. Miles Davis's fusion bands became incubators for a new generation of musicians who would go on to lead their own highly influential groups. John McLaughlin guitar, Joe Zawinul keyboards, Wayne Shorter saxophone, Herbie Hancock keyboards, Chick Corea keyboards, and Tony Williams drums, all alumni of Davis's electric period, formed seminal fusion bands like Mahavishnu Orchestra, Weather Report, Return to Forever, and Lifetime. These bands explored various facets of fusion, from the high-energy, technically dazzling complexity of Mahavishnu Orchestra to the more ethereal, atmospheric soundscapes of Weather Report. They integrated elements of rock, funk, R&B, and even world music into their jazz framework, creating a diverse and vibrant subgenre. Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, 1973, with its infectious funk grooves and emphasis on rhythm and repetition, became one of the best-selling jazz albums of all time, further demonstrating the commercial potential of jazz funk. While fusion dominated the commercial landscape of jazz in the 1970s, more traditional forms of acoustic jazz continued to evolve, albeit with less mainstream attention. Bebop and hard bop practitioners continued to play and innovate, keeping the flame of acoustic improvisation alive. Figures like Dexter Gordon, a towering tenor saxophonist, made a triumphant return to the American scene after years in Europe, reminding audiences of the enduring power of mainstream jazz improvisation. The avant-garde also continued its explorations, with musicians like Anthony Braxton and the Art Ensemble of Chicago pushing the boundaries of structured improvisation and incorporating elements of theater and world music into their performances. The 1970s were a complex and often contradictory decade for jazz. It was a period of immense stylistic diversity, with musicians exploring every conceivable avenue from electric, high-energy fusion to the deepest reaches of acoustic avant-garde. The commercial success of fusion, while controversial, brought jazz to a broader audience, albeit one that sometimes struggled to reconcile the new sounds with the music's rich history. This era cemented jazz's status as a constantly evolving art form, always seeking new sounds and new expressions, even if it meant challenging its own traditions and facing internal divisions. As the 1980s arrived, jazz found itself grappling with questions of identity, tradition, and its place in contemporary culture. The widespread popularity of jazz fusion in the previous decade had brought new listeners, but it also sparked a fierce debate about the authenticity and future direction of the music. Many critics and musicians felt that fusion had strayed too far from jazz's core principles of swing, improvisation, and the blues. In response to this, a powerful neo-traditionalist movement emerged, advocating for a return to the acoustic sounds and established forms of earlier jazz, particularly the hard bop and swing eras. At the forefront of this movement was Wynton Marsalis, a prodigiously talented trumpet player and articulate spokesperson. Marsalis, steeped in the history of jazz and classically trained, became a polarizing figure. He argued passionately for jazz to reclaim its heritage, emphasizing the importance of swing, melodic improvisation, and the blues as the fundamental pillars of the music. His impeccably played acoustic jazz, rooted in the styles of Miles Davis, Louis Armstrong, and Duke Ellington, resonated with critics and audiences eager for a return to what they considered pure jazz. His immense talent and vocal advocacy helped reignite interest in acoustic jazz, particularly among younger musicians who found inspiration in the masters of the past. Marsalis' influence, particularly through his role at Lincoln Center's jazz program, led to a re-evaluation of jazz history and a focus on preserving and performing the music of the great masters. This emphasis on tradition was vital in ensuring that the foundational elements of jazz were not lost amidst the myriad stylistic experiments. It also fostered a new generation of musicians who were deeply knowledgeable about jazz history and technically proficient in its established styles. However, the neo-traditionalist movement also faced criticism for being too conservative, for potentially stifling innovation, and for creating a rigid orthodoxy that excluded other valid forms of jazz exploration. Critics argued that jazz, by its very nature, was about constant evolution and breaking boundaries, and that a strict adherence to past forms could lead to stagnation. Despite these debates, the 1980s saw a resurgence of acoustic jazz, with many talented young musicians emerging who were comfortable playing in mainstream, post-bop styles. The influence of classic hard bop, in particular, was strongly felt, with a renewed focus on improvisation over complex chord changes and a strong rhythmic drive. Beyond the neo-traditionalist movement, jazz continued to diversify. Musicians continued to explore elements of world music, drawing inspiration from African, Latin American, and other global traditions, enriching the rhythmic and melodic palette of jazz. The growth of jazz education programs in universities and conservatories also had a profound impact, creating a highly skilled and well-informed generation of musicians who could perform and improvise in a wide array of styles. While jazz may have ceded its place in the popular music mainstream, it continued to thrive as a rich and dynamic art form, supported by a dedicated audience and nurtured by a committed community of musicians and educators. The 1980s represented a period of introspection and consolidation for jazz, a time when the music grappled with its identity and history, setting the stage for a more inclusive and diverse future that would embrace both its storied past and its boundless potential for innovation. As Ken Burns's jazz documentary draws to a close, it reflects on the music's journey into the late 20th century and its enduring legacy. The 1990s and beyond saw jazz continue its paradoxical existence, commercially niche but artistically vibrant and globally influential. The jazz wars of the 1980s, debating tradition versus innovation, largely subsided, giving way to a more expansive and inclusive view of what jazz could be. While the neo-traditionalist emphasis on acoustic swing remained a strong current, other streams of jazz continued to flow and cross-pollinate. Musicians continued to push boundaries, integrating elements from hip-hop, electronic music, and an even wider array of global traditions, proving that jazz, at its heart, is a music of absorption and adaptation. The concept of world music became increasingly prevalent, and jazz musicians, with their improvisational prowess and harmonic sophistication, were uniquely positioned to collaborate across cultural boundaries, creating exciting new fusions that transcended geographical limitations. Artists from Europe, Africa, Asia, and Latin America contributed their unique perspectives, enriching the global tapestry of jazz. The documentary also emphasizes the remarkable resilience and adaptability of jazz. Despite facing numerous challenges, economic downturns, changing musical tastes, and the persistent struggle against racial prejudice, the music has consistently reinvented itself, found new audiences, and continued to inspire. It highlights how jazz, born from the unique experience of African Americans, grew to become a universal language, embraced and celebrated by people of all backgrounds around the world. The narrative circles back to the foundational figures, underscoring their timeless contributions. Louis Armstrong's revolutionary soloing, Duke Ellington's compositional genius, Charlie Parker's harmonic innovations, and Miles Davis's restless pursuit of new sounds are presented not just as historical milestones, but as living inspirations for contemporary musicians. The documentary implicitly argues that true innovation in jazz is often rooted in a deep understanding and respect for its traditions, rather than a complete rejection of them. It suggests that the tension between tradition and innovation is not a weakness, but a source of jazz's enduring strength and vitality. Finally, Ken Burns's jazz concludes with a profound reflection on the music's meaning. Jazz, it argues, is more than just a musical genre. It is a profound metaphor for democracy and the American experiment itself. Like a healthy democracy, jazz thrives on individual expression within a collective framework. Each musician has a voice, but they must listen and respond to one another, creating a harmonious whole out of diverse perspectives. It is a music of improvisation, mirroring the challenges and uncertainties of life, demanding quick thinking, adaptability, and the courage to take risks. It is a music that embraces change, but never forgets its roots. The series leaves us with the understanding that jazz is an ongoing conversation, a constantly evolving art form that continues to reflect the complexities, beauty, and contradictions of the human spirit. Its story is far from over, as new generations of musicians continue to find their voices within its expansive framework, ensuring that the unique sound of America will continue to resonate for centuries to come. A testament to the enduring power of creativity, resilience, and the universal language of music. In conclusion, Ken Burns's jazz documentary series is not merely a chronicle of a musical genre. It is a sweeping epic that illuminates the very fabric of American history and identity. From the painful origins in the crucible of slavery to its emergence as a global art form, jazz has consistently served as a profound expression of freedom, individuality, and collective spirit. It's a story of extraordinary human creativity flourishing against immense odds, a testament to the power of art to both reflect and shape society. The series masterfully demonstrates how the music's evolution mirrors the nation's journey through segregation, war, social change, and technological advancement, highlighting the persistent struggle for racial equality and the transformative power of cross-cultural exchange. By immersing us in the lives and sounds of its towering figures, Armstrong, Ellington, Parker, Davis, Coltrane, and countless others, Burns reveals how jazz, with its unique blend of discipline and improvisation, chaos and order, embodies the very essence of the American spirit. Its enduring impact lies not just in its musical innovation, but in its profound commentary on what it means to be human in a constantly evolving world, reminding us that true harmony emerges from the courageous interplay of diverse voices.